On the QEH matter, we've heard a lot about resources, an absence of resources or posts not being filled and so on. But I do have to confess that sometimes I'm not clear on the HR approach to the staffing of the QEH. And my question is coming from a place of feedback from constituents who are sometimes on a relief basis. So they're coming in to cover for someone. And then they have this temporary employment and they go off again and then they're waiting for a call. I know of an individual who has had that status for 12 years. Now, I know that there is a sense, or there's an extent to which people want to give people a chance at working. And so you say, well, there's a notion that you kind of want everybody to have a chance. But here's the thing about a chance when it comes to short-term employment. We as human beings establish consumption habits, right? We start to work, we start to cover our basic needs like food and shelter and utilities and so on. And then we also start to, to do other things that all of us would like to have the opportunity to be able to do. Maybe make repairs to our homes and maybe take out a small loan and that kind of thing. I'm trying to understand on behalf of my constituents and perhaps others who have this kind of status. What is the HR approach at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital when it comes to the filling of posts or when it comes to the management of employment? Because I seem to keep hearing a lot of these situations where people have this kind of insecurity in their work and they do not understand. So please help us to understand.
Thank you. I'll ask the Executive Chair to address you, and also the Director of HR, Ms. Reeves, is here.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Cattle. It's such an important question because it reflects so many, and it's been a historical challenge at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, transcending government administrations. The basic issue is that the hospital is made up of essentially two types of positions that are established in the permanent establishment, a number of posts, and then there are posts that are temporary or relieving posts. What is happening over the years as an institution, the approach has been taken not to fill all of the vacancies in the established posts, and instead rotate persons in a limited amount of vacancies. So let me give a specific example. So suppose in the orderlies department, for instance, you have 70 established posts. You will have perhaps about 65 persons who are established and appointed. If the Queen Elizabeth Hospital takes the route of filling the additional vacancies, you're going to fill those vacancies essentially with 5 persons. Over the years, what has happened is that a policy decision or a policy approach has been taken that to give the opportunity for several persons to get work, they take those 5 available positions and they essentially rotate several persons into those vacancies. You're correct. What it does is create uncertainty, instability. It is not really an ideal form of work. And essentially, because of the culture of the institution, when a person gets one of those relieving posts, and they could be in those posts for a number of years, they're not able to qualify for appointments because they're not working consistently and steadily as would happen in other areas. Most hospitals, modern hospitals, approach this situation very differently. They establish their HR needs by way of permanent full-time employment and then part-time. So they may cover evenings or weekends by way of part-time employment. So you'll hear when you talk to people overseas, all of our relatives across the globe, I work full-time, but I have a second job, part-time in this, or I'm a nurse and I'm working evenings, 2 evenings at a particular hospital, because that person is working in a category that's accepted of part-time. But what happens over time, because some of these persons develop specialized skills, they get called regularly. So a policy decision has to be taken at the board, and I would dare say at the policy level, as to exactly how we're going to satisfy our HR needs at the institution. Because we could make a decision as an institution that we're going to fill the vacancies, but that in effect would remove a category of staffing of persons who are now relieving, and the number of persons who are relieving over time essentially has grown. So it is a decision that has to be taken. I actually have done an informal poll of persons who work in that category, using the same example. Would you prefer us to fill those 5 vacancies, or would you prefer to work? Many of them have said to me, because it's really become now part of our organizational culture, they fear that they won't be one of those 5 who are selected. But in this scenario, they're working, they'll get called maybe 6 or 7 months out of a year. So that's why, honorable member, that we are going to have to make it a policy decision as to whether or not, as an institution, we're going to fill all of our permanent established posts, reduce the numbers of persons who are substituting and relieving, and instead convert some of those requests into part-time or sessional or those kinds of arrangements. And I've been very, very direct with you in my answer.
Susan Rees, Director of Human Resources acting.
Thanks.
Pardon? Susan Rees, the Director of Human Resources acting. And within our HR policy, what we always look to do is to ensure that we do a bit of job sharing. That job sharing helps with a lot of persons being engaged in a particular area. Just to expand on to what the Executive Chair had responded to, we would have 5 vacancies. Instead of filling those 5 vacancies with 5 officers, we would share that with maybe 15 officers. And what we would do within that, at least 15 homes would be provided some kind of financial resources. Unfortunately, it may not be the ideal type of recruitment for persons who would want a job on a longer level. And for those persons, we do understand that it's a bit difficult. However, to engage other persons, the other five persons within that 5 vacancies, what we do, we have maybe, let's say maybe those persons, instead of working 12 months in a year, those persons will work 3 months in a year until we have some type of attrition going on where persons will exit the organization. So when persons exit the organization, then those persons will be engaged on a more continuous basis, and then you will have less persons being rotating within those positions.
Thank you for those responses. I have to tell you that I'm grateful to the Executive Chair for your response that acknowledges that this is a suboptimal situation. When a person has established consumption habits, and I'm using a fancy term that economists use, but it's really eating and drinking and paying for your bill. When a person is able to do that for 3 months and then can no longer, where do you think they're going? They're going to the welfare department, they're going to the other agencies of government, and while it may disappear as a problem for the QEH from an HR perspective or from a development perspective, it reappears as a problem for the other agencies of government. And so I'm encouraged by the thinking that the executive chair has done on this to start to think, well, how do we create a part-time or sessional approach to this? Because while people may tell you, well, I prefer, in your poll, I prefer to hold on to the little pick, is because they haven't been offered anything else. And so when we measure employment in this country, and we say we are at 7% unemployment, often we are counting people that are not always working, and we are calling them employed, and they're not employed because they are otherwise depending on the services of government, the social services of government. And so that brings me to my second question. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital is a hospital in a community.